Welcome to part 1 of the Procedural Textured Burger series. On this tutorial we will be creating the bread. If you are new to Procedural Textures, you should probably watch my introduction series and then come back. Links on the description. Add a UV sphere with 12 segments and 6 rings with a radius of 1 meter. Go to Front View. Enter Edit Mode with Tab. Activate Wireframe Mode with Shift-Z. Or X-Ray with Alt-Z. So we can select the vertices on the back too. Make sure you are in Vertex Select mode, if not hit 1 on your keyboard. Select the lower part of the sphere and delete these vertices. Select this vertex loop. Press F to fill, then I to inset. Then inset again. Add a bevel modifier. Set the method to angle. The segments to 3. Adjust the distance. Add a subdivision surface modifier with 2 subdivisions. Activate Shade Smooth. Now let's adjust the angle limit of the bevel modifier. Scale the object on Z-axis only by pressing S and then Z. Apply the scale with Ctrl A. You may need to adjust the angle limit of the bevel again. Use the offset to adjust the bevel size. Top bread ready, now let's create the bottom part. Move the top bread up, by pressing G then Z to only move it on the Z-axis. Add a cylinder. Scale it on Z-axis. On this case we will use the weight limit method on the bevel modifier, to have different size on the top and the bottom bevels. Add a subdivision and a bevel modifier. Change the limit method to weight. I'm changing the bevel limit to angle to make some adjustments, but we will go back to weight in a minute. Remember to apply the scale with Ctrl A. Increase to 3 segments. Activate Shade Smooth. Make sure your bevel is on top of the subdivision modifier. Enter Edit Mode, select the top edge loop. Open the right panel with N, then go to the Item tab. Adjust the mean bevel weight for the edge. This will control how much of the bevel offset this edges will use, so you can adjust them individually. Select the bottom loop and set the weight to 1. Now when we adjust the offset, the bottom loop will get the full effect, while the top loop gets just a fraction. Inset the bottom face 2 times. You can make adjustments to the weights to get the shape you want. Go to front view with numpad 1. Check that both breads have roughly the same width. Remember to apply scale if you make any changes. Bread ready. Now we will add the textures. Select the top bread and go to Shading tab. Create a new material and name it top bread or whatever you like. Remember, to add a node, just press Shift A, then search its name. Also having Node Wrangler add-on active, makes the process a lot simpler. If you are new to procedural textures, remember to watch my intro series, all the links are in this video description. We will start by creating a vertical gradient scale that goes from top to bottom. We will use generated for most of the textures, since it has a scale from 0 to 1 that matches the scale that color nodes use. If you have Node Wrangler add-on active, you can Ctrl-Shift left-click nodes to preview their outputs. By separating the Z-axis we get a vertical scale. Now we will use a color ramp to change the colors of the gradient. It changes a 0 to 1 scale, to whatever we put on the ramp. I'll be pasting the same values I used on the demo model, you can copy them or change the colors to your liking. I'll be using the hex code, just type the same values and you will get the same colors. Add steps by pressing the plus symbol, and adjust the position to move it through the scale. We have the basic color, now we will add some variation to it. In Object Texture Coordinate, the 0 to 1 scale is determined by the object bounds, so we will add a mapping node to adjust the aspect ratio of the textures later. We will use noise textures to act as masks for the color variations. Again, I'm using the same values I used on the original model, feel free to adjust them to your liking. Add a Mix RGB node. Connect the ramp to the first color. Now add a brightness and contrast node. We could use any color affecting node, but in this case we will use this one. Connect the ramp to the color input, change the brightness value to -0.1. Then connect the color output to the second color of the Mix RGB node. Now we will use the noise as the factor to mix them. Now to fix the aspect ratio for the noise textures we have to check the object's ratio. You could also use object coordinate at a map range node, but we will do it this way for this case. My bread is roughly 2 times wider than its height. So to compensate, I will duplicate the scale on X and Y compared to Z. To show you what's going on, let's preview the noise output. When all the axes have the same scale, the texture looks stretched horizontally. When we compensate the scale, the aspect ratio gets fixed. Of course, you can stretch this on purpose depending on the effect you are looking for. Now let's adjust the noise texture values. Connect the factor output to the factor input of the mix RGB node. We are starting to get some color variation. Now let's repeat this with different values. Duplicate the mix RGB node by selecting it, and pressing Shift D. Connect the first mix RGB output to the first color of the second. Duplicate the brightness contrast node and connect the color ramp output to it. Change the brightness to 0.08 and connect its output to the second color of the last mix RGB node. Duplicate the noise texture. Change the values as I do, or choose your own. Don't forget to plug the texture coordinates. On this case, we will use a color ramp to adjust the scale to make this mix transition sharper. This will act as a mask, letting the new texture more visible as the scale increases or the color becomes closer to Y. Now if we plug this color to the principled BSDF color input, we can see how the light and settings affect it. It's looking pretty good so far. But the surface is still completely flat. So our next step is to add bump to it. We will use 2 different bumps with different sizes to make it more real. We could use the same noise textures we have, but I prefer to control them independently. Again, copy my values or pick your own. We will also use a color ramp. In this case, we want to limit how much of this texture shows to make it less evenly distributed in our object. Change the interpolation to B-spline. Add a bump node and connect the ramp color output to its height input. Connect the bump node output to the normal of the principled BSDF. Adjust the distance of the bump to 0.03. Looking good. Now let's add a second bump with a smaller noise. Duplicate the noise texture. Copy my values. I will replace the bump to show you how this one looks. Even if the noise texture looks smaller, the scale is from 0 to 1, the same as the big texture. So they have the same distance from the lower point to the higher point, and if we mix them like that, the smaller texture will completely cover the big one. So we have to somehow make the scale of the small texture smaller. We can achieve that by using a mix RGB node in mix blending mode, and setting the factor closer to the 1 value, that is the lower color input. By setting it to 0.9, the scale of the lower input becomes 9 times larger than the one on the first input, that has now an influence of 0.1. As you can see, now the big texture is higher than the small texture, giving us the result we wanted. Just for learning purposes, don't follow me on this part, I will show you another way to make this point more clear. With the map range we can change the scale, making it instead of 0 to 1, a 0 to 0.1 scale. This will have the same effect, making the height for the small bump 10 times smaller. Now we adjust the big noise to a scale that goes from 0 to 0.9. And then we use a math node with that operation. The result as you see is the same that with the mix node. I hope that makes some sense to you. If it doesn't, don't worry, the more you practice, the more it will understand. Let's put this back how it was. Last thing, we will add a bit of subsurface scattering to simulate the light going through the object. Top bread ready. If you are a bit tired, go get something to drink, stretch your legs a bit, and come back. Now the bottom one. We won't go through every detail since it is pretty similar to the top. Select your bottom bread, create a new material and give it a name. Add a texture coordinate node. Add a noise texture with these values. The lower bread is looking a bit too straight, so we will add a bit of a curvature. This is optional. Select the object, go to Edit mode with Tab. Create a new loop cut in the middle with Ctrl R, then scale it a bit. We will multiply the scale to adjust the ratio. Then we will add color variation with the Mix RGB node. Using the noise as the factor, we will pick two different colors. Again, you can copy mine or pick your own colors. Now we will mix the result with another color. Duplicate the Mix RGB node. Duplicate the noise texture and copy my values. Connect the noise texture to the factor of the Mix RGB and change the bottom color. Duplicate the Mix RGB one last time. Duplicate the noise texture. This time we will use a color ramp again to tweak the result. Adjust the color. Adjust the color ramp values. Now copy the noise texture values. Connect the noise texture to the factor of the Mix RGB node. Connect the output to the principled BSDF. I will make some adjustments, you can copy or change to your liking. I will also add a bit of subsurface scattering. Now we will deal with the bump. Duplicate a Mix RGB node. In this case we already have something similar to what we want on the color masks, so we will use the same noise outputs. We will mix them with a factor of 0.1. Since the small noise texture is on the bottom this time, and we want a top texture to have more influence. Add a bump node. Change the distance to 0.04. And connect it to the principled BSDF normal. We will boost a bit the first mix with a color ramp. And the last thing we will do to finish this spread is the gradient that gives the top a softer color. Okay, good job, our bread is almost ready. We will add some sesame seeds to the top bread to make it look a bit more interesting. Go to Weight Paint mode. Here we can create a map that will give our seeds a specific spreading. Blue areas will have the less and red areas will have the most concentration. As you can see, it is the same thing as creating vertex groups and assigning vertex with different weight values. You can do it as you prefer. I'm selecting the top vertex, and using Ctrl and the plus on the numpad to extend my selection. Press the plus button to create a new vertex group. And with the weight at 1, and your vertex selected, press the assign button. Now select this loop, change the weight to something like 3, and assign them. As you can see, the weight paint also changed, so you can use either way. Now that we have the group created, let's model the seed that we will use in our particle system. Shift left click to move the cursor, create a UV sphere of 12 segments and 6 rings. Scale it down. Then move it up again. Now scale it on the y-axis to start getting the seed shape. Enter edit mode and adjust as I do. You can create your own shape if you want. We will add a basic color for now, we will later add random color proceed when we have the particles finished. Rename the seed to something you can recognize later. Select the top red. Go to the Particle Properties tab. Press the plus button to create a particle system. Change the particle type to hair, particle number to 100 and the hair length to 1. Change the distribution to random. Change the render to object. Select the seed. Change the scale to 0.8 and the scale randomness to something like 0.2. Activate Advanced. Activate Rotation and copy my values. Select the vertex group we created to control the density. If you have some seeds out of place, you can adjust the paint in vertex weight paint. To remove, just paint with 0 weight. To make some of the seeds lift a bit from the bread, we will randomize its orientation, change the axis to normal, and add a bit of randomized value. You can hide the original seed and disable it in render. If you don't see these buttons, you can activate them on the filter options. To add a bit of variation to the seeds, we will make each one pick a random color from a color ramp. Select the seed and go to Shading tab. Add an object info node into color ramp. You can use it as a gradient and let each seed pick one value of the scale, or you can change it to constant to pick each of the available colors. You can click and drag colors from one node to another to copy them faster. I will make small variations to the same color. The random output of the object info node will give a random number between 0 and 1 to each object instance, in this case each seed. I will adjust a bit the colors. Well, bread ready. Before we continue with the next part, we can make a few adjustments to the render properties to make it a bit better. Activate ambient occlusion. We may later adjust its values for the final render. Activate bloom. Activate screen space reflections. Activate refraction, deactivate half-freeze trace. Activate soft shadows. And that's it, you are one step closer to complete the procedural textured hamburger. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. On the next part, we will be making the meat and the cheese. Thanks for watching.